Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our November 5th council meeting. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Roll call.
Mr. Oja?
Here.
Mr. Menegini?
Here.
Dr. Hayes? Mr. Gottstein?
Here.
Mr. Babalani?
Here.
Before we get into the bulk of our meeting this evening, we are going to be having two things under committee meeting of the whole. First one is going to be the fiscal year 2010-11 City of Norway audit and management letter presentation. The second will be the Sturgeon Falls Hydroelectric Facility FERC mandated safety planning. Mr. Scott Kenny is here, who performed our audit, and if he would like to come up and present his audit report.
Okay, I'd like to thank the council again for engaging me to perform the audit for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2012. You should have received actually two bone booklets, as you have in the past. The first one, the much thinner one, is in reference to the Norway Utility Authority. And just by way of refresher, the Norway Utility Authority is really the financing vehicle for the bulk of the sewer project that was done a number of years ago. That debt is being paid down, and at the point in time that that debt is paid, barring some additions to that, that utility authority, the functionality of it, will probably cease to exist and will, at that point in time, go away. I have summarized both the financial statements and the audit itself on the slides. I've given you copies of those slides a little bit earlier this evening. I've also got them here for our review. What I've done with those is I've attempted to summarize the 90 or so pages that are in the book, talk a little bit about the financial position, some of the good things that have happened, and some of the problems that have been incurred, and to highlight those items for the board. The references, the page numbers that are referenced on the top of the slides are tied to the page numbers that are in the bound book, the City of Norway Audited Financial Statements. There are a number of types of audit opinions that we as auditors can give. They include a disclaimer of opinion, a going concern opinion, an adverse opinion, a qualified opinion, and an unqualified opinion. And I won't bore you with definitions of each of these, just to say that the unqualified opinion is the highest level of opinion that we as CPAs can render on a set of financial statements. And the city again achieved an unqualified opinion on the financial statements, which state that they're fairly stated in accordance with the governmental accounting rules that are set forth for municipalities. On page 15, this is just a brief look at the general fund. The total revenues, including transfers, are $2,400,000. I just included a pie graph that kind of includes where those dollars came from, so that you've got just a quick pictorial of where the bulk of the dollars do come from, and you will see that property taxes are in the kind of 12 o'clock quadrant going down to about 4 o'clock. The large piece on the other side are administrative fees that are charged throughout the various funds of the city, coming back to for the benefit of the general fund. The expenditures, which are also on page 15, you can see those total about $2,300,000. General government is the operations of the office. Pretty much that's all that's included in that. The public safety is the police and fire departments, or the transfer to the fire department at least. Public works does not include the streets. Those are summarized separately. Parks, recreation, capital outlay, and then there are outgoing transfers primarily for the purpose of paying debt. Just the same pictorial, but kind of all on one page, again from page 15. Revenues at $2,400,000, expenditures at about just over $2 million with transfers out being 250,000 or thereabouts. So you can see that there is a small net gain. The fact that that line points up means that it's a net gain for the year. The city this year has a number of major funds, and these are defined by governmental accounting rules. The general fund is always a major fund, and as such, it's a fund that I spend more time auditing. In addition to that, your two street funds and each of your enterprise or your utility funds along with your Gulf fund are considered major funds. The major street fund, and this is the fund balance. This is the performance of that fund over time, and you can see that it is on a downward slope here. That is a trend that I see in most cities. There is not adequate funding coming into most of the street funds in order to continually keep those up, so they are, if streets are to be rebuilt or repaired, a lot of times they're done in conjunction with a utility project. If the general maintenance of the fund is pretty much what's paid for through the state shared revenues that come into the major streets. Local streets, and you can see on that one, it's almost identical to where you were last year. The scale here is much different than it was on the previous slide. You can see this is different than what we've got here. So neither one of these funds have an abundance of money in them, nor is there any good reason particularly to keep an abundance of money in there unless you're anticipating doing some street construction projects and are saving towards those. The non-major funds, and I've put these all on one screen. The first one here, this is the Downtown Development Authority. That was a major fund last year. It is because of the, not the financial performance of the fund, but the total of the activity in the fund. That is no longer considered a major fund. So you can see that we have been consuming some of the dollars in there. That's a good thing. That fund is not intended to get it to hold money. It's to improve what the downtown area is and the various projects and economic development in that district. So you can see that fund balance sits at about $200,000, which is certainly a healthy position to be in for that fund. The city has been very effective in the use of the dollars that have gone through the Downtown Development Fund in the various improvements that have happened in the district. The fire fund, you can see here, is fairly small. That really amounts to transfers from the general fund into that fund. It has a small fund balance. I would assume that is going to continue to have a small fund balance. Again, unless you're really saving for a piece of equipment, and I'm going to talk about this a little bit later in my presentation, there's no good reason to accumulate dollars in that fund. Oops, I'm sorry. The museum fund, the drop from approximately $100,000 last year down to about $50,000 this year is attributed to a substantial gift that was received the prior year, and a portion of those dollars were spent on a large capital project that was done within the museum fund. The debt service fund, you can see there is no fund balance there. There are transfers that come into that fund. Those dollars are then taken and all paid back out for the payment of principal and interest for the governmental funds of the city. And the capital projects fund, again, unless you have a project or projects that are designated, there's no good reason to accumulate dollars there. One thing that did happen during the year is the city had obtained a couple of community development block grants, or continued to work on a couple of community development block grants, and those dollars originally were recorded in the capital projects fund here. Those were subsequently reclassified over to the street funds because they were for street-related projects, with a small piece going to the water fund. TV, And this is a fund that's a real concern to me, and I'm gonna come back to that. You can see that we had a fund balance, fairly small, and these are unassigned dollars, and there's a definition of what unassigned is. Basically, it's the cash and receivables that you have to spend there after your general liabilities have been paid. But you can see that this really took a drop this year. You had completed the project. My concern in that fund is the number of customers that you have and are maintaining. And that's an area, and it's in my letter of comments and recommendations, which I'll cover in a few minutes, that you're going to need to take a good look at your charge structure there. You need a good look at it in the form of raising what the charges are. I know that you spent some time in that arena, but that certainly does need to be improved. The electric utility.
Why
I'm sorry.
would you think about raising the rates for the cable if we're struggling with our customer base?
Well, that's one of the things that you need to take a look at. You can't continue to go at the pace where you're at because of the financial performance of the fund. You're not profitable within the fund, and it's also not generating positive cash flow. So you don't want to be having to dip into your general fund in order to subsidize that, or one of the other funds for that. That's always a trade-off, without question, Mark. To look at that, but the cost structure that you have in there, you have a pretty limited number of employees in that fund too, that are dedicated to that, out working in the field, along with pretty much one office person. And so your opportunity to save costs from an operational perspective aren't very high in my estimation. So the other side of the revenue is the other side of the equation, and you're going to need to do something to increase the revenues in order to improve the financial performance of that fund.
We had talked about the digital package, that we're struggling with customer base on a digital package. What would happen if we did something different with the digital package? I just don't feel we can raise the cable rate and still maintain a good customer base with the competitiveness on the market.
Yeah, and I'm not necessarily purporting that you raise the cable rate. You know, you've got cable TV, internet, and telephone in there, and all of those contribute towards that. So you don't have to increase the TV side of things. You could increase internet, you could increase the telephone charges, you could increase your bundle packages. You can look at a lot of different things, and you've got some opportunities there. You're right. I mean, those higher end packages are really the opportunities, the better opportunities that you've got for not losing that customer base as you look at doing that increase. You've got to look at it, see what kind of dollars it's going to generate for you, and see what you think is going to happen with your customer base once you do that. And you've got to look at what's the demand within the marketplace, and cable TV is obviously one of those that are going to continue to have difficulty.
Which one of the funds do you think is the drawback out of those three? The internet, the phone, or the actual cable?
The cable.
Cable?
Yeah, that's...
With the subscriber fees, you're saying?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, the fees are okay there, but you've seen a continued degradation of your customer counts, particularly in the cable TV. And, it all needs to be looked at. Internet, you seem to have, in my eyes, a pretty good grip on. Telephone is still, in my estimation, a relatively new service to you. You really only had it operational for roughly 2 years, probably not even completely for that entire period of time. And I know that the council took some action here just recently, hopefully with some cost savings, with the renewal of the contract that you talked about a couple months ago. I don't recall the exact date on that, but I am aware of that. So those opportunities are there, certainly take advantage of them, but I think they're going to be forced to take a good look at, particularly on the telephone and the higher end internet packages, and actually the higher end cable TV. I think you probably have some opportunities there as well.
I just think that if you do something with the TV, as being that the dish people are so aggressive, that we may lose customers.
Yeah, and
It would hurt us in the long
that's, you know, that's always something that you do need to consider, there's no question about that. But you can't continue to have
Yeah.
the financial performance that you got, I guess is the moral of the story. The electric utility continues to be one of your champions. You've got unassigned fund balance in there, a nice, comfortable unassigned fund balance, although you continue doing work in there. Do have quite a bit of debt in there, but certainly the structure of that fund certainly is solid and continues to be one of the real cash cows for the city. Golf course, you can see that the unassigned assets did actually go backwards slightly this year. From where we were, saw a small loss in there during the year. That is a fund I know that we've gone back and forth with here at the council. I've talked about that at various times. You took the major step here 2 years ago, perhaps, maybe a little more than that, and got the debt reset. You're going to be paying on that debt for a couple of more years, and once that debt is paid, this fund is going to look better than it does right now. But you've got to continue to service the debt that is there. So that did take a small step backwards during the year. Water fund, excuse me, that also is a nice solid fund. You have done quite a bit of work there. You do have a couple of bond issues in your water fund, but that continues to be profitable. It also continues to generate positive cash flow for you, both of which are positive within that fund. The sewer fund, actually, you can see these lines bend downwards. This is the zero line right here on top. The fact that this is trending upwards is a good thing. That means that your loss is getting smaller is what happened there. So that's certainly a positive. I have seen that. The city has done a lot of work, made staffing changes in there, have made procedural changes in there, and those are certainly bearing fruit for the city.
Scott, on that sewer fund, I see that you thought that we should adjust the rates on the sewer fund, and you just said that it's actually more in the positive state than it was before. So why would you say that it needed to be adjusted if we're heading in the right direction?
It's something to take a look at. I'm not necessarily recommending that you make that change, but you've still got negative cash. You've got positive cash flow, but this is the unassigned net assets that are within the fund. When you look at that, it's still a fund that we're not getting rich at it. It's not our intent to get rich at it, but we want it to at least to continue to pay for itself and what have you. My concern there is you're kind of on that edge within that fund, and I just want to make sure that look at it as in my letter of comments and recommendations. I say look at all of your utility charges aggregated. I mean, don't say I want to recover for the TV fund by raising the electric charges. Look at them individually, but look at them all at the same time and come up with a formal plan to be able to do that. But that is a fund that it did improve somewhat during the year. It's still negative, and I would like to see you get that on the top side of that line. Just kind of a narrative, performance of how did each of the funds do. Increase in the general fund, decrease in the, in the major streets. No change basically in the local streets. The other governmental funds saw a small decrease. Each of the funds are there. On an overall basis, if you look at page 12, you'll see that the net assets actually for the city on an overall basis went up about $240,000 for the year. So that's certainly a positive note. There's, included in this handout that I gave you just earlier this evening, there's a debt schedule kind of in the middle of there. It's following along on these slides. And I'm going to be going to that in just a minute. On the debts, and the reason for that is there's been a lot of discussion here regarding the amount of debt that the city has and where it comes from. The only new loan that the city took out this year was for the streetlights, and there's a payback on that streetlight loan. It was a portion of a grant. You got a no-interest loan on that through your electric provider, where you provide WPPI, where you're providing or purchasing power from, and that was for the replacement of streetlights with LEDs. The savings by not consuming the power on those is actually paying for the debt on that. Continues to be a pretty heavy load on the city, as far as that goes. Debt philosophy, you need to take a look at a couple of things with this and who will service the debt. And what I'm talking about here is, do you want to save in order to do a project, or do you want to do a financing? And I will tell you, I'm a big advocate of doing financing. And the reason for that is that I think that the folks that are going to benefit from the service should be paying for that service. So if you save for the last 40 years in order to do a sewer project or a TV project or a water project, those folks for the last 40 years aren't getting the advantage of that. It's the folks for the next, how many ever years it's going to be, are going to get the advantage of that. Whereas if you finance it, do you have some costs? Yes, and you certainly need to consider those, but then it's the people that are benefiting from the service that are actually going to be paying for the service. And that's different than what I would stand here and tell a commercial entity. I hear a lot of folks say, you know, if I compare this to what's going on in the outside world, that, you know, debt is a bad thing. Ordinarily in a commercial enterprise, in many circumstances, I would agree with that. Not in the case of municipality. I'm a big advocate of the folks that are benefiting from that service, paying for the service. And should you borrow, so then the question becomes, should the city borrow to proceed on equipment or a project? You know, we've got the debt schedule. I'm going to flip this in just a moment here. That's the debt schedule. I apologize for you folks who are sitting here in the audience. It's a little bit small. The council has this in their package. And I've broken this schedule. This is a schedule that I had originally put together a couple of years ago for the council, and there's been a lot of questions that have been posed to me regarding debt, both internally from the department heads and the staff, and I wanted to cover this briefly. This shows on the top the general obligation debt of the city. That means that it's not going to be paid for specifically with the revenues that are coming in from a sold service. They're called non-exchange transactions. You can see that the total of that as of June 30th, 2012 is about $4 million. Total debt service on that for annually for this coming year is $626,000. Then I've just included where the dollars are coming from and the year that that debt is going to be paid. The lower portion of this, or actually the middle portion of this, if you will, is the revenue bonds. Revenue bond is where you are going to, you want me to wait a minute, Ray?
Yeah, we're just trying to.
Okay, yep, no problem.
Where's the slide in? Should be here. You handed out the slides.
Here we go.
This is,
I didn't see it here.
those revenue bonds are intended to have the revenues of each of the funds actually pay for the services that are there. As a matter of fact, included in your bond ordinances are a provision that you will show profitability, you will show cash flow in order to be able to adequately service the debt on those. And you can see the various funds and functions that those are, when those again are going to be paid for, and those are specifically tied to a given fund. The other debt, other long-term debt, which is the couple of items on the bottom of this, the first one is in reference to your pension plan. Your pension, we do not have an actuarial, did not receive, not a default of the city. MERS had done some changing, Municipal Employee Retirement System had done some changing this year and has not given to the city the annual actuarial report. So these numbers are exactly the same as they were a year ago, because we don't have numbers as of 12/31/11 at this point. These numbers are from 12/31/10. What would they look like? I hate to even venture a guess. I don't have a clue, and I would offer to you that wait until you get that report to be able to address that. I will tell you that the city is funding its pension obligation pursuant to the actuarial report that came out 12/31/10, which set a specific funding level, which is intended not just to fund what's happening currently, but also that back obligation that is supposed to be gone in accordance with this calculation in 28 years. You could talk about the performance of the stock market and all kinds of things, and all of that enters into this, but without some updated numbers to know if we're improving, if we're going backwards, it's really difficult to say what's there. And the other item, the OPEB, other post-employment benefits, which is really retiree health insurance, is primarily what we're talking about here. We had not had, the city's required only every 3 years to have an OPEB valuation done. And we had one done in 8, we got another one done, in 9, we got another one done this year. Have the numbers as far as the finalization of those go. You can see that it went from about $1 million up to $1.5 million. The city has taken the steps to limit that in all cases with the exception of your police department. The police department has rates increases on top of their retiree health payments that there is not limitation on. Everyone else has a limitation on it. So it's something to consider as you enter into negotiations and those kind of things, because of that total debt of $1.5 million, about $500,000 or about $500,000 of that number is attributable directly to the police department. So I wanted to bring that to your attention. The funding that is to be going on for the OPEB, and if you look at page it's going to be about 54 or so. Not or so, it is 54. That's a summary of the OPEB debt information. One thing I wanted to point out, as I just stated with the liability that we have for the pension, we are indeed servicing that debt. It will be paid off if we follow the schedule that we've got out there. As opposed to OPEB, because of this large increase, and you can see the funding level went from $79,000 up to $121,000 because of the revaluation that was done. So we actually funded that only to the tune of about $63,000, where we should be funding that annually at about $121,000, according to the most recent contribution numbers. I will tell you that the city didn't have these numbers until literally about 2 weeks ago. So there was no way for management to be able to put the $120,000 or know that they were going to short by that amount of money over those years. You can see we've been a little bit short. That's probably the only real area that is not being specifically addressed from a debt perspective. And I talked a little bit with Mary about it, a little bit with Manager Anderson about it when I was here, and you just need to account for that within your budget as you head forward for this year and then as well for coming years. Oh, one other item there, grant availability. One other reason, quite frankly, not to have a lot of money set aside is there are, especially federal government grants, that will look at how much money you've actually saved, and you will actually not get as large of a grant portion if you have a lot of money in hand. So that's another good reason not to save a lot of money towards a given item. Other debt, we just kind of talked about this. We don't have the 1231 actuarial. Total liability is $1.5 million. We do have the OPEB trust established from a couple of years ago. We only have a couple of grand in there. That is something that, as I just stated, that we probably should get going as far as funding goes, particularly as you take a look at your budget for the rest of this year and as you prepare your budget for the next year. It should be at the $121,418 mark. And also, as I stated, we just had our triennial actuarial determination taken care of on that. Going to the letters, the letter of comments and recommendations, which is the enumerated letter. There are no material non-compliances, there are no material weaknesses, but there's a couple of items here that I did want to cover. Significant deficiencies, there's two items that are remaining from the prior year, and I'm recommending that you don't correct one of them. If all is well, this will go away because there's a proposal that's presently out here that we're going to be able to get rid of this in the state of Michigan if this gets approved. And that's that I'm preparing your financial statements. And when I talk about your financial statements, I'm talking about this book. I'm not talking about keeping your books or what have you. I'm talking about the actual GASB 34 compliance statements that you've got. And I do that for every one of the audits that I prepare on an annual basis. I recommend that you continue to have your auditor, me, prepare your financial statements. You don't want to lay that additionally on your staff, plus I don't know that you actually have the resources in order to be able to complete that. The second item, you got some utility accounts receivable that are severely delinquent. These have been taken off the books value-wise, and also we tried some collection agencies. We put some of them on property tax bills. We just need to be able to remove these from where we've been. It's really a housekeeping kind of item, but it needs to be taken care of. Utility profitability and cash flow. This is what we discussed a little bit, just a little bit ago. Each of the utilities are intended to be profitable by themselves. Costs do appear to be reasonable in the various funds. Rates need to be taken a look at, particularly in the TV fund, as I had stated earlier. Other items, you did have, one of the items that I came across when we were here auditing is you had an illegal expenditure. An illegal expenditure is a list of items that are defined by the state of Michigan. We bought some gifts for the firemen. We're not allowed to do that because of the value of those. So just something to be cognizant of. It was not a substantial item, but it's something that I needed to set forth to the board. One of the things I've talked to Mary about is to take a look at banking in more than one institution. All of the city's funds presently are at the First National Bank of Norway. This is no reflection on the Bank of Norway. I just think with the amount of cash that you have, you should take a look at splitting that up. Take a look at getting some alternative rates and even just from a credit protection perspective, perhaps do some splitting of the funds. Equipment rental procedures, when I was here auditing the equipment rental system, which is the system that the city has for charging, for instance, to the street funds, the use of equipment that's owned by the general fund. And the system needs some fairly substantial revamping. We had begun testing that and actually stopped because of some of the procedural items that we had come across that we felt needed to be updated. I've talked to the staff about that. Feel that that will get corrected, but I wanted to just bring that out there. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that the council may have of me, either on any of the slide information or anything contained within the letters or the audit report.
You didn't have anything listed as far as improving in the police department to get those, that department on a more self-sufficient? I didn't see anything in here.
The police department is a general fund department. It is not intended to be self-sufficient. We're not looking, I mean, clearly we're looking to save money wherever we can. We want to operate as effectively as we can and as efficiently as we can. But it's not like the electric fund or the water fund.
I know it's listed under the general fund.
That's correct.
But I mean, because that fund because the police department uses up the majority of our tax dollars, you didn't look at anything in there?
Well,
as far as that?
Certainly we looked at it as far as testing it from a compliance perspective to make sure that the items that were there are there. Did I look at it from a managerial perspective and say, I agree or I don't agree with the staffing patterns? As an auditor, that's not what we're paid to do. That would be a consulting type arrangement. I'm looking at it, were the items that are there, are they appropriate? Are they well documented? And the answer to those items are yes. So did I look at that individually from an efficiency perspective? I didn't single them out and look at those. No, I did not.
Okay. Yeah, I was just concerned. I'm still concerned about the staffing in certain areas on the day shift, and I didn't know if that was looked at in perspective. So, okay.
Any other questions? Mary? Comparing this to our other audits, how are we looking?
Well, as you can see on the one slide that I showed you, on an overall basis, you actually improved slightly your financial performance. You went up, I think the number was $240,000. So clearly you went forward. You don't have any, well, you have one piece of new debt, but that's going to be taken care of by savings that you have for that. So clearly that was a well worthwhile borrowing. So I would say that you improved from where you were over the last year, over the last couple of years, and that continues to, work towards that, yes.
Good.
Last year, you said we were a 4 out of 10. Would you place us in the same position this year?
Yeah, one of the things I had said last year, let me clarify something, because Mr. Mangini had asked me the question last year, perhaps he remembers, and it hit me after I sat down. The question was on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being the lowest, 1 being the best, how would you rate us? And at any rate, I answered the question, and I meant to have you at a 40th percentile. In answer to your question, Dr. Hayes, I would say I would probably put you still in there, but certainly making progress towards getting more towards that 50th percentile. $240,000 towards the additional net assets for the city, in my eyes, is a a real plus for this city. I don't see that happening, particularly in the other cities that I'm auditing. So that's a plus. And in addition, you continue to provide services for the residents that you've got here, and that's what the mission of the city is. So, I think that it's not just from a dollars and cents perspective, but you've been able to maintain the services as well, and that's a real plus.
Curiosity, Scott, how many municipalities are you doing work for?
About 10. I'd have to go through and actually list them, but I would say about 10 presently. Most of them are cities. I do work with one county and some townships, but most of them are cities.
I'm taking it most of those don't have their own utilities like the city of Norway though, right?
I've got one other city that I audit that has the same utility base that you do. Most of the cities have water and sewer departments. As I stated, of my clients, only one other one has a electric utility and a TV utility.
So actually, we probably should be well above them because we have our own electric and that's our cash cow.
Well above, I guess it depends on how you want to measure that. Would I expect that? Yeah, you have more debt as a result of that than most of my municipalities. Your water fund is in better shape than most of the municipalities that I work with. Your sewer fund's not in as good a shape, but I will also tell you, in your sewer fund, one of the things that you have here is a plant. Not all of the municipalities, even cities that I'm working with, have a plant. Some of them have settling ponds, and excuse my ignorance if that's not the correct terminology, but they don't have an actual plant to process sewage. They actually have ponds that they use, so they don't have the same cost structure necessarily that the city of Norway does, where it's combined and processing sewage as well from the Norway Township. But clearly it's a benefit, substantial benefit, to have your electric department. And the city would look markedly different without it. You've been able to do some things.
That's what I was getting at. It's hard to compare us to the other communities because they don't have that major fundraiser like we do with electric.
Yes, yeah, I would agree with that.
Our major problem is in employee retirement. Do you have any observations or recommendations as far as what the city should do in the future?
We've spent a goodly amount of time, I know the manager's been involved with attempting to get some changes made to and through the MERS system. The MERS system, quite frankly, is in trouble, not necessarily because of the city of Norway, although you're not as well funded as perhaps some of the other municipalities, but you're certainly not in the position of the city of Detroit, where they're $1 billion down, or the city of Flint, or some of the other large cities. And I'm not totally sure how that rolls through to impact on the city. I have to believe that it impacts somewhat, but do I have suggestions for improving that? I guess the one thing that I would recommend that you do take a good look at is putting limitations on your retiree health contribution towards your police department. That will, in my eyes, substantially drop that number, maybe not immediately, but will certainly drop that $500,000 number down to something much less than that. But that's a collective bargained issue, and I know from having bargained contracts in the past, there's give and take when you do those. So they may have wanted to keep the position that they've had and foregone some other benefit. I'm talking about the police officers, for that. But I think that that's an item that you really need to take a good look at and try and put some limitations on that. The other employees are limited as far as the benefits that they have there, and that's reflected in the actuarial study that's there, as far as the retiree health goes. We've talked internally with management. I have talked regarding the pension plan itself and wanting to get away from MERS for new hires. And the city has met with negative feedback from MERS. They obviously don't want you going away because that's not the way the system works from their perspective. But Manager Anderson has been very proactive in attempting to get them MERS to change their stance on some items and to allow you, as you go forward, at least for new hires, to be able to control your costs there and perhaps even go away from the defined benefit plan that you currently have, either to a defined contribution or a hybrid plan. So those are, those are the proper thoughts to be having, and you're taking those steps. I've seen those in the correspondence and whatnot that I've seen here as I've audited.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you, Scott. Okay, next, under committee meeting of the whole, we have the Sturgeon Falls Hydroelectric Facility FERC mandated safety planning. Mr. Anderson.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a bit unusual, but what we did was were notified, we the city, we were notified, about 4 to 6 weeks ago that FERC was implementing an existing rule. Let's make that clear. It's an existing rule. It was on the books, but they're now moving forward to make sure that it's implemented amongst the dam owners regarding dam safety and safety type activities. The difference in this particular initiative is that the program is really top-down generated. In the past, when we've handled our regulatory issues, licensing issues, required to put together programs for FERC, we've typically leaned on our engineering firm, the consultants that are experts in the field, and really leaned on them to help us develop the plan. In this case, this has to be management-driven and council-driven, and so Joe and I got together and we looked at the outline which I've provided for you in the packet, and started to draft this plan. And then, as far as for council's participation in this and top-down, we're going to put together a series of these discussions for not only council but the community. And at the end of the day, we're going to have a pretty traditional-looking plan, but it's going to be something that we can say that we're all intimately aware of, that we've all intimately helped in crafting, and that we'll have a resolution here in, say, the first meeting in December that will add to the plan, which again shows that we've had these in-depth conversations. We are still getting assistance from our engineers, from Mead and Hunt, especially in the way of language and helping to take the thoughts that we have and getting those into the draft. I've included, you had a draft in your packet that I handed out over the weekend. There's an additional draft that was put on the table here that came in today, which is updated from the one that was in your book. So we'd like you to take a look at that, and we're going to start the conversation. Joe, if you would like to start by going down through what we have to date, and we can then decide as a group here for the next meeting what we want to concentrate on.
Okay. The first part of this draft, and this is just a draft, is our thoughts put on paper. It was sent down to Mead and Hunt. They kind of massaged it just a little bit, sent it back for us to kind of chew on and think about it. First few pages are basically terms, definitions, and introduction, which is not overly relevant, but it has to be part of it. When it gets into the main body of the document, we talk about dam safety policy, objectives and expectations, and it just, in that area, they want us to focus on putting stuff together that we have the buy-in from the city council. Ray Anderson, the city manager, your utility superintendent, that's safety. And I wanted to find the word safety for you. It's not safety that you traditionally think about to make sure you don't have any spills, trips, falls, personnel type safety. When we're talking the dam safety, we're talking about the structural part of the hydro, of how it's adhered to the foundation to make sure that the structure is not moving, that if there's signs of things cracking and concrete falling off and different things that could happen over time, that the city council, city manager, and myself, and right down to all the staff levels, each in their own right, knows what to do about that, knows that it's extremely important for the safety of the people that live downstream, and that we will take every effort to make that dam as safe as possible, is basically what this is all about. So we kind of took a stab at some language in here, and as you read through it, it's pretty self-explanatory. So I don't really need to start reciting the language to you. The next area there is responsibilities for dam safety. That just goes through the organization of who the individuals are, what their roles are, and how that all plays into this. The dam safety training program area is just making sure that the people that work there are trained properly into what to look for signs of deterioration. We have documents in place and have had them in place that they fill out on a monthly basis. If there's any problems with anything, they bring it to me and we take a look at it and see if it's more serious and take action if necessary. Communications, coordination, reporting, that's just the process of how it all comes to myself, then to Ray, then ultimately to the city council. I do not want to leave out the electric utility board, even though they don't have authority to make rules, they do make recommendations to the council. Up to this point, I've let them out, but they would be involved in this also. We identify them as an element in here of a double check, kind of cross-check everything. Responsibilities of plant operations and maintenance personnel, that just describes a little bit about what everybody's responsibilities are. Then it goes right into the responsibilities of the utilities superintendent, what the expectations of myself are with the hydro dam, which is the most lengthy section. Then the responsibilities of the city manager and what's expected of him in this, and then the role of independent consultant, our Mead and Hunt, for structural, for electrical safety, it would be Krause Engineering and what their roles are, and our consultants. Another consultant you would add into that would be HDS or Kaiser Hydro, they're also a part of this. If something were to happen, you know, we would go to them and say, hey, what do we need to do? What's the fix here? What's best practice? And then double check that with Mead and Hunt. The external requirements and protocols, that's just about communication and how you correspond, documentation of things that you do. That's also record keeping and database. All the record keeping is all done with computers now, so that's all getting documented every day. One of the ones that I struggled with the most and was this next section called succession planning. And it's basically about when I retire, when Ray retires, get a new council person, how do you get them up to speed? How do you get them to buy into this program? And that's what this whole thing is about, is from the top down. And how you deal with that. We kind of took a stab at putting some language together, and how we succeed each other, and how you bring the new people in and train them. So,
Joe, shouldn't it just have Kaiser Hydro under the experience hydro design and equipment fabrication, and maintenance and repair? Shouldn't it have, because I know C.R. Myers did work down there years ago. I mean, it's listing a specific contractor. I know Kaiser probably has the most knowledge, but is it right to just have them listed in here as?
I think, I'm trying to think of how to answer that. We're just putting them in there as someone that is local, that we would be able to draw on their knowledge. Let's say I left, and you had a question on best practice of how to do something at the hydro. There would be somebody at Kaiser Hydro right next door here that you could go to. That's not saying you couldn't go to anybody else by listing them here. You can. It's not limiting you, okay? It's not limiting you at all. It's just saying they're right here in town. We've used them a lot in the past. I feel that we can run over there and get an answer to a question without too much of a problem. So that's what the purpose of that is.
Okay. I was just looking at it like it was a limitation.
Yeah, and it's not, Mark. It's not meant to be a limitation, okay? Internal audits, how we look at the performance of the hydro, compliance. You know, that's done on an annual basis with our FERC licensing. Mead and Hunt takes care of that, along with myself. At the end of every year, we put together documents for FERC and send them off, so that's pretty well taken care of. And then some of the references here that we use, other documentation that we have on surveillance monitoring plan that we currently have, consultant safety inspection report. We've done a potential failure mode analysis year before last. We have all that documentation, so we've listed all that as areas where we draw from knowledge to build this document. And then last but not least, which I believe is probably the most important to prove to the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission that you have the buy-in from the top down, and that is the resolution that we will adopt when this document is done and have it outlined in different segments of what the importance is, and then you pass that resolution and that gets attached to this document to say, yeah, we've talked to the council, we've got they're agreeing that this is important and this is what we're gonna do, so.
Joe, is this, I know a lot of this stuff we've done already and in the process of doing. Is it because they've lost 3 earthen dams that they're really starting to fine tune this?
That was, if you go out on the World Wide Web and you start looking this stuff up for FERC, and that's what it leads you to believe when you start reading things. There's been a few dams, one in the UP, that they lost. Earthen dams, not totally different from what we
Right,
have.
right, right.
We're in bedrock. But yes, there were some earthen dams. There was one that was a pump storage unit, and the operator didn't turn the pump off at night when it was full, and it crested and blew it out and caused a lot of problems. And FERC feels that by doing this document, we will all get a better perspective of what the responsibility of owning a hydroelectric facility is, basically.
Is there any procedures, or maybe they shouldn't be in this, but about upstream happenings? So if something fails, say at the
Right.
dam up from us, the communication between that facility and our facility and how that's handled in case an event happens?
Right, and we reference it in here, it's the EAP, Emergency Action Plan. No, I know I put it in here somewhere.
Yeah, I see it
It's on the first page.
As on the first page? Okay. We do reference it. We do have those plans in play with We Energies, and that's been in existence since I've been here. We go to meetings every year on it. We exercise it every year. We call everybody and make sure the numbers are still good and say we're running a mock disaster, you know. This is what you do. I'm letting you know that we have a problem and water's coming at you. You know, you call your people and on down the road. So that is happening. So, I don't know if there's any more questions. That's about all I have to say about it. Specifically, Ray, if you have anything. This is the first introduction of it to the council, and we're going to continue to work on it and bring it, the revisions to you.
Yeah, we'll bring them back at the next meeting under committee meeting of the whole and entertain questions. I mean, during that 2-week period as well, but we'll have it at the next council meeting as well.
Thank you. Okay, we'll call the meeting to order. We're looking for approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of October 15th, 2012. Any additions or corrections?
I'll make a motion, we approve the minutes of the meeting of October 15th.
Support.
Motion made by Chris, supported by Mark. Roll call?
Mr. Oja?
Yes.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Dr. Hayes?
Yes.
Mr. Gottstein?
Yes.
Mr. Bubbalani?
Yes.
Approval of manifest 2012-21 in the amount of $753,733.46. Mark?
I got a couple questions here. On page 5, Ray, for the Leif Erikson to-do that we had down here, I don't see anything that was kicked back. It shows that the meal costs that were put out by Loretta Catering and Miss Pollard, it doesn't show where there was any money that came in from that. Typically, doesn't that show on there, Mary?
No, the money coming in doesn't.
Doesn't
But
show on it?
they brought in more money than we paid out in expenses.
Okay, yeah, I was hoping to see something like that on there. On page 6, down on the electric side, Joe, is there a reason why we have water coolers at the hydro and we don't have them anywhere else? Like at the Public Works, is there no water fountain down there, or what's the deal?
No, there's a 40-foot shallow well at the hydro that is really not fit for drinking,
Okay,
and we have to supply some water for the guys.
okay. I was just curious because
That's
I
what
don't
it
see anything else on any of
No.
the other. Okay. The We Energy, Ray, up on page 6 for the poll agreement, is that the only poll agreement we have with We Energies? Do we have it with anybody else, the phone company or anything? Because I never see anything for the phone company. I know we talked about that
Yeah,
a couple of
believe
years
that-
ago.
I can take that.
Go ahead. I don't believe
I'll talk about that for a minute here, Mark. What you're looking at is an expense for a pole attachment agreement. The electric utility utilizes some of We Energy's poles throughout their system. We pay rental on that. The cable, you'll notice it occasionally in the cable fund. when we owe them money. There's more poles attached in the cable than there is in the electric. What you're asking about is revenue from pole attachments. And yes, we have a very large, I don't recall the last, 8,500 or something like that,
8,000 that we get per year from AT&T.
from AT&T for the pole attachments on our system.
Do we have a pole attachment with WE where they're on our poles too or not?
No, we don't, they're not on any of our poles. Just AT&T, and we get, I think the last time I checked, it was like $9.60 an attachment, per attachment.
Yeah,
for those.
cable is usually the one that gets on somebody else's pole.
Yeah.
And it's
Okay.
usually the owner is usually the electric company.
What about with the ones that have just come through with the running their fiber?
We did a pole attachment agreement with them as well,
That's what I thought.
and then they're
Yeah,
running
it's just-
underground as well, so.
It's not in play yet, but we did
Right.
Right.
make an
I
agreement
just
with
wanted
them.
to make sure it was.
Yeah, that would be another revenue stream.
Page 7, Joe, down at the hydro, the spider orchid for
Yeah, the-
757, that's done every 2 months? Because I've never seen that before.
Yeah, it is, Mark. In fact, they come every month and they spray their chemicals in the cracks and put out the traps for the mice and everything, yes.
Okay.
I don't recall if you were on the council when we approved that, but we had a bad spider infestation.
Well, I haven't seen it even this time. I know,
Oh,
for
okay.
the last months, I haven't
Th-
seen it on
They've
here.
been on here, just hadn't noticed it. They've been
They're
here.
usually on there for just 1 month at a time.
Yeah.
But we had, I don't know if it was just the council dates, the meeting dates, that we ended up with 2 months on one.
Okay. The golf cart rental, Ray, I see down there, Oakcrest Golf Cart Commission reimbursed for cart storage fees. What is that?
We have a transfer agreement with them. So the cart storage, they have their cart sheds. So I mean, if we took in monies for shed fees, we disperse that back to the golf commission.
Okay. That's all I have.
Chris?
Page 1, under the admin, the ICMA membership renewal. What is ICMA?
ICMA is the International City Managers Association.
And then page 3 at the bottom, signs, authorized vehicle only for $700. It's a lot of signs. What were those for?
Were those the ones over by, Joe?
I'm trying to think of,
11th
we
Avenue
bought a
goes-
few signs.
11th Avenue goes through to behind those houses, and they don't want vehicles driving through there.
Oh,
Yeah, we
yeah.
had some
Okay, yeah.
resident complaints. So
$700
vehicles,
worth of
I don't know what's all.
That would have been on the 11th Avenue where it turns and goes up the hill. That snowmobile trail that goes through to the substations. We were getting, the person that lives right there was complaining that there's a lot of traffic going through there and it's not meant to be a through road. And we ordered some signs to put up in there to keep people out.
It was $700 worth of signs?
Yeah, but there's not that many signs, $700 worth, well, especially when they're custom made. If you can't find the exact wordage you want to use, then they're
Seems like
custom
a
made.
high amount for
Yeah.
signs. That's all I had.
So that's still used as a snowmobile trail? It's just
Yes, we're-
vehicular
Yeah,
traffic?
I'm talking about cars and trucks. We're using it a lot, and they're not supposed to be using it.
Okay.
Dr. Hayes?
No questions.
Wait,
Everything I had is taken care of.
and I have no other questions. Looking for approval, manifest 2012-21.
I make a motion, we approve manifest 2012-21 in the amount of $753,733.46.
I'll support.
Motion made by Mark, supported by Lee. Roll call.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Dr. Hayes?
Yes.
Mr. Gottstein?
Yes.
Mr. Babalani?
Yes.
Mr. Oja?
Yes. Does anyone from the audience wish to come up and address the council on the minutes of the manifest? If not, there'll be a further time for question at the end of the meeting on any subject. Okay, we have 3 things on the agenda for this evening. First one is Resolution 2012-28, the fiscal year 2011-12 City of Norway Audit and Management Letter. Mr. Anderson.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. We, historically, annually, we pass, or we have council pass a resolution accepting the auditor's findings and letter and placing on file. That's what's before you this evening.
Is there any other questions on the audit? Again, I'd like to thank Mr. Kenny for doing our audit and the report. For a motion.
I'll make a motion, we approve Resolution 2012-28, acceptance of fiscal year 2001-2012 City of Norway Audit and Management Letter.
Support.
Motion made by Chris, supported by Mark. Roll call.
Dr. Hayes?
Yes.
Mr. Gotstein?
Yes.
Mr. Babalani?
Yes.
Mr. Oja?
Yes.
Mr. Menehini?
Yes.
Approval, Department of Public Works, hot patch truck insert. Mr. Anderson.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This particular item was on your agenda last meeting, tabled for staff to go and get references and recommendations. We provided that for you in your packet. You can have Mr. Pickert give some additional details as he searched out these recommendations, but I think there was a unanimous, not close to unanimous, recommendation that they like their hot patch. Is that true?
Yes, everyone that I spoke to that had these said that it was a big improvement. One of the specific areas that I was asked by Lee to address was, if I remember correctly, was the longevity of patching with it versus not patching with it. And are you getting more life out of a patch using this versus not using it? So that was one of the direct questions that I asked. And the hot patch repairs, one of the individuals told me that they're seeing 2 to 3 years longer using this as a hot material rather than a cold material. It binds it better. I specifically asked about how they prep their holes. And it was all the obvious things that I talked about before, but I just hadn't asked the question. If there's a lot of loose material, they get it out either with a stiffer bristle broom or something, or a air compressor, they'll blow it out. One of the interesting things is that they noticed that in the void of the hole itself, there's a lot of rough areas, there's areas where it's undermined a little bit. They said it seems to go down in those cracks and crevices a lot better than the cold stuff would do. And it does actually a better job of sealing off that hole so water can't get in it versus the cold method. So I did what you asked. Everybody liked them. They would all buy them again. The one place I talked to, the guy was really excited about them. You know, they bought 2 to try them out, and this was a fairly large Dodge County, Wisconsin, large county. They bought 2 of them. Within 3 months after they bought them, they bought 5 more. They said they work really good. So I did what you asked. That's the information that I have, so.
Would you be using this year-round on the truck, or?
Yes, it would be used year-round. The other area that was brought up that I really never mentioned in the first round was if you have a large patch on a road, let's say you dug up a water main, you took a big chunk of street out, and you wanted to fix it more permanently. In the summertime, when there's a hot mix plant in the local area, which there usually is somewhere within a driving distance, they said this particular unit works really good to go up and get the hot mix, regular asphalt, because it keeps it nice and warm. You tarp it, bring it in, and you can put it in. The key to that, obviously, would be to have a roller to roll it out with. My thoughts on that is to talk to Scott Morin Excavating, and see if I can work out a deal with him that if we're going to do that type of patching, we can rent that from him when we make those patches. And I believe he'll probably do that, but I haven't asked
On
him
those
yet.
type of patches, Joe, I think we're better off just to have the contractor come down here and do it themselves, rather than play around.
Okay.
On the procedure again, Joe, does it say in there where they tamp it down or just run over it with the truck?
There's two things that were identified. The one guy said they built just a 1 foot by 1 foot flat metal, put a bar on it so it's heavy, kind of like a post driver would be. And you put it right at the back of the truck because it has the bucket that sits down lower, closer to the ground. It sits right in there. The guys take the patch out, put it on, just grab it, hit it a few times, and away you go, or drive over it. Both areas were identified, but that's how they did it.
Well, I noticed I went for a little jog tonight. I didn't go that far, but we've got some awful holes starting already, and a couple of them, I would say, they're not, diameter-wise, they're not that big, but they're a good 3 inches deep.
I drove through last week 16th Avenue, Scenic Drive, came around, checked the railroad tracks down.
There's a couple of dandies on 16th.
Yeah, it's starting to get pretty bad, so.
And you talked to them specifically about winter patching and how it performs?
Oh, winter was way better than the summertime, or winter was a lot better than if you didn't have it.
Were they
The
having to-
patches last longer,
Were they having to go back in spring and repatch those holes, or were they
No.
holding up
2 to 3 years.
even in
Life,
winter?
even in the winter, yes. Yep.
Joe, didn't they say something about the removing it and putting it back on? It was
Oh, yeah,
relatively-
as far as, there's just a couple pins that you take out, so if you want to use the truck for something else, it's fairly easy to slide out of the box. There's some quick connects on the hoses, and it comes right out. So it's not something that's permanently installed.
Well, if this works as good as they say, it's gonna be a tremendous cost savings as far as labor goes for going back every month.
Labor and material are your two biggest. Also, you know, obviously, we don't have a lot of money to redo roads at this time. And it's a tool for us to have to try to make what we have a little bit better. So I think it would be an improvement over the way we do it now and could possibly save us some money.
You did have this in the budget, didn't you?
This was budgeted, yes, identified in the water budget for this year to purchase this.
I don't understand why they don't have the drop part of it heated. When I looked at that picture, it doesn't look like the drop part where you're actually shoveling off of is heated. So I mean, if you're dumping the material down where you can reach it, unless you're throwing it in a hole immediately, it's gonna be cooled off.
You're
From what I
right.
got out of the picture, it's
Yeah.
not heated on the drop.
No,
So,
you're correct. I don't believe there's
I don't,
hoses that go
I
down
think
there.
we're wasting our money. I think we should be saving our money and actually paving the streets for the amount of patch that we actually put down in winter conditions. I don't think it's worth it. You can't get cold patch in the winter. They
No.
only have a certain amount, and
We-
we only
we-
buy a certain amount. And I just think we're wasting our money. It's almost $13,000, and that's 3/4 of one block that could be done. And if
Remember
we
that
keep,
this isn't a water fund. I mean, just the 13,000 that you'd be saving is in the water fund, so.
we have
unless
no
you
other
do a
projects in
transfer-
the water department where we could use that money?
Correct, but I'm just saying, I mean, you mentioned that it would be half a block, but I mean, you'd have to actually transfer that to the street fund just to do paving in a block, you would, unless you do a water project. So-
Well, I think we got other water projects. We got some areas that have low water pressure that maybe we should be taking the money out of the water project and working on that to keep the citizens happy that are paying their water bills.
Go ahead.
Can this use recycled materials?
That would only be possible if the batch plant was using recycled materials. But there is a certain percentage of, you have to request that. And if they take the recycled material and they grind it in their process, yes, it would use recycled materials.
And unless the hole is prepped, Joe, and if there's moisture in the hole, it's not gonna stick. I know it's gonna bound the material a little bit tighter to itself, but it's not gonna stick in the hole. And I think the majority of our problems are is because we're not packing the patch. They're not even running it over with a truck. So it's loose in the hole. I think we're wasting our money.
I think we do need to look at procedure too, along with the equipment, just to make sure we're following the right procedure, making sure we're prepping the hole right, packing it right. I think that goes a long way, even improve what we have now. Personally, I think we do a little too much patching in the winter. I don't think we should be patching like we are, because it doesn't hold up. I don't know that, they say it does, the ones you talk to. If it holds up, fine. I've seen lots of things where we patch in the winter and the plow comes by 2 days later and it's all in the bank.
I think we have to be a little bit more aggressive in the fall when we should be patching right now heavy and getting ready for winter. And then in the spring on a nice day.
Joe, do you have any idea, dollar-wise, labor and cold patch, what for the year would you say that you've spent on patching holes? Could you come up with a figure? Because even if you
I'd
cut
have to go
that,
through all the payroll records, and when they are patching, they do mark down their hours for patching. But it would take a little bit of work. It's not impossible, but
well, I'm just saying
the
if,
cold mix is a fairly easy number to get you
yeah.
on what we spend on cold mix.
But if it
That's a
costs
simple one.
$10,000 in labor, I mean, if somebody calls and says, hey, there's a big pothole in front of my house, I don't care when it is, you're gonna go take care of it. Or
Yeah.
you should take care of it.
Right.
So if you can come up with a labor cost, just say even $10,000 in labor for the course of the year, and if this operation works, you cut your labor cost in half,
Yeah.
2.5 years, you've got the piece of equipment paid for.
There
Providing
aren't-
you correct the procedure.
Well,
If
yes, the
procedure's
procedure,
not
like
being
Jeremy
done
said,
right,
the
it isn't
procedure's
gonna-
gotta be
still ain't
there
gonna
also.
stick.
And that would be up to you.
In my mind, it's all inclusive, you know? You're talking about the procedure, and I've already been thinking about that and talking to David about it and saying these things have to change. You know, if we're gonna get this thing, you know, it needs to be done the right way. So those conversations between myself and David Ball have been happening already. So basically, I guess, you know, do you think it's a good idea or not, you know?
How long do you think the patch is gonna stay hot if it's down on the bottom versus in the top where it's heated?
Well,
When it's
it heats
winter
it to about
conditions.
180 degrees, Mark. As long as they don't fill the whole thing up, you know, with the amount of material that we go through, I would say 5 to 10 minutes, it's gonna stay, and then after that, it'll start to cool substantially. So, you're right, I mean, you can't put a whole pile of it in it and then expect it to stay hot, because that's not gonna work. It's not heated, you're right, it isn't. But that's a procedural thing that we need to identify to say, when you're patching, only put a little bit in, and take care of it. It's not meant to drive around with it down with a bunch of it laying in there and then just stop and patch. It's not designed for that.
Do you have an estimated life expectancy on a piece of equipment like this?
No, I don't have that. It's 1/4-inch steel, a couple hydraulic cylinders, electric motor, and some tubing.
So if we're gonna amortize this over a period of number of years, that
I
even though
don't,
they,
this isn't like a 5-year piece of equipment. This is a long-term thing. It's not gonna wear out. If you get a hose that breaks or something, you fix it, patch it, you know? So, I don't see the steel wearing out anytime soon. We've had that 1-ton truck for how many years shoveling out cold mix, and that bed's still in good shape, so.
And I think just because we got the money in the budget for something, we don't have to spend it on that. Do we have other utility paying customers that are low on water pressure where we could use this money to actually step up their water pressure and better the system?
Not that I was made aware of, Mark. I mean, there could be some out there, but I can't tell you specifically any individual where there's a problem. So.
Okay. Looking for a motion on the Public Works asphalt hot box.
I make a motion, we deny the purchase.
Is there support? Is there another motion?
I make a motion, we approve that the hot patch truck insert purchase from Casper's be approved for a price not to exceed $12,068.
Is there support?
I'll support.
Motion made by Lee, supported by Dr. Hayes. Roll call.
Mr. Gottstein?
Yes.
Mr. Babalani?
Nope.
Mr. Oja?
Yes.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Dr. Hayes?
Yes.
With this, Joe, and still, if you could, Joe, like to see the, like we had requested, how much we spend on patching. Still like to
Yeah,
get that for you.
It's gonna take a little bit, Jeremy.
Yeah.
Give us some time, because I'll have to go through payroll records.
And-
And would make sure we get some kind of procedure.
And I would like to see the write-up on the procedure.
Yeah. Okay,
That's an important part of it with this.
I agree, it is.
Okay, approval, traffic control order number TC 12-04. Mr. Anderson.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The traffic control order that's in front of you tonight, if you notice, there was a letter provided by Law Homes requesting that we increase the no parking on the east side of Stevenson from 50 feet to 80 feet. That's due to truck turning into their driveway. So we had the police department will check out this area, and we have the aerial in your packet, as well as the resolution for the traffic control order.
Are there any questions?
It sounds like they're just having trouble with rentals that they're dragging out of there, not delivery trucks, right, Lee?
That's the first I heard of it when I saw it in the packet, but that's what it said. It's the average Joe Blow, I guess, that goes in there and pulls out with the skidster or something on that big, long trailer, from what I understand.
See, I don't understand that. If the guys can get a 48-foot semi-trailer in there to deliver stuff, and the guy can't pull a trailer out of there with a piece of equipment on it, there's something wrong.
Those trucks go farther down, or they're almost another half a block down.
Half a block down where?
You can use a different entrance.
It's 6th Avenue. They come in on 6th Avenue.
Okay. What is done on the opposite side of the road where the trucks are coming into Loadmaster and there? What is that parking arrangement, Ray?
Well, there's parking on both sides of the road, but the road is wider.
Wider?
You know, yeah, they widen that out as an actual truck route.
Okay,
This one is, you know, it's typical.
okay.
Do the people living there have any comment on this, or were they?
I think the people living there would support this.
It's only the one house involved, isn't it?
Yeah, it's one house.
It's already back to the first house.
And they support this.
Okay, is there a motion?
I make a motion, we approve traffic order number TC-12-04.
Second.
Motion made by Mark, supported by Chris. Roll call.
Mr. Babalani?
Yes.
Mr. Oja?
Yes.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Dr. Hayes?
Yes.
Mr. Gottstein?
Yes.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is our business for the evening. Does anyone wish to come up and address the council on any subject? If you do, please come up to the podium, state your name and address for the record.
Dennis Peterson, 213 13th Avenue. I was wondering if this was gonna go on the city website, this audit?
Yes,
But
yes,
for
it
for the public to see?
Yep, absolutely.
Will it be the full audit, Ray, or will it be the full book or the report, or?
Scott,
What goes on?
we have a PDF coming of the full audit, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, the full audit will be on the web.
Anybody else wish to come up and address the council? Okay, Lee.
I got a few items here. Under Ray's memo there on the HIVAC system, I see the bottom line that, here it says, it appears that our problem goes all the way back to the original design. Now, I know if this was my house, I would go back to the original designer to try to get something out of them because things are so screwed up. It almost seems like you do something for the city. A perfect example again is on the main street, there's a couple of spots on the side streets when they put new manhole covers in. They put the wrong lumber underneath to shim it up. So a couple years down the road, we got to foot the bill for that too. And there's just nobody held accountable. And on this deal, I think we should go after the designer, whoever it is, I have no idea, but to see if we can get some kind of reimbursement for them, because I believe what was the cost on that, Ray? I had it here someplace.
50,000 something.
Yeah, to get everything back up to snuff, because somebody screwed up big time.
Yeah, I did that, Lee.
Okay, another thing I have.
Lee, no, I did that. When we first moved in here, I spent 2 years going after Hitch, trying to get this system balanced, trying to get it worked out. And barring taking them to court, and I think, Jay, I think you were with me on that one, we couldn't get them to own up to the issue. So I did work hard at trying to get that issue fixed, or some of the issues fixed.
I'm not saying you didn't try, Ray. I'm just saying I can't believe we can't get something out of them. I mean, it's ridiculous. Like I said, if they had done this to my house, I'd be all over them. Okay, another thing I have there, we were talking earlier about the dam. It was brought up at the last meeting where it was a possibility that those cement blocks we had in the river were illegal. Well, I see Joe dug up the paperwork, and a few people had asked me about it. Hey, I hear this is illegal. And according to Joe's notes there, we're good through January of 2015, so they are legal and that is not an issue.
It sounded like they were not on the original report, though, that they might have been not supposed to be in there because the report was redone. It said that there was something
Yeah, there's
redone on the report, and they were added to the...
No, they weren't added, Mark. When you brought it up to me, I investigated it. On the posted notice that we have to put by the boat ramp, it had the wrong expiration date. Well, the DNR verbally told me they were good, the permits are good for 5 years. So in my mind, I thought, I got another year and a half left on this thing, no problem. I go down there and look at what's posted on the post, and it was issued on the exact same day it expired. They made a typo when they sent the notice from the DNR. So we called the DNR, they said, oh yeah, we're sorry, we'll get you a new one. So they just put the right expiration date on it, that's all it was. So that's what it's all about.
Okay, I just have one more thing here. Then on a lighter note, with all the political flyers coming out lately, I can't believe the post office didn't make money last month. Because if they didn't make it last month, they're never going to make it. And the telephone calls, I'm sure everybody's a little sick and tired of that. I had 9 messages today. And I mean, I had Bill Clinton call me, Sarah Palin call me. It must be pretty important. Governor Snyder, and even, and here's the kicker. Now I forgot the guy's name. Pat Boone. I thought he was going to start singing Love Letters in the Sand to me. The only one I didn't get a call from was Elvis. That's all I have to say.
Dr. Hayes.
The only comment I'd like to make is that I think this county ought to go forward and stop going through time change every year. I think we need daylight savings time in the winter when the days are short, not in the summer when they're long. So I think we should go on Eastern time and stay there and let the rest of the country move around us. Of course, this council can't do anything about it, but I thought I'd just get that off my chest.
Well, there are a few states that agree with you. Few states, few counties that agree with you. Anything else?
No.
Mark?
I think Scott did a good job on the audit, and I appreciate that, Scott. I got one problem. Next to Red Line Marine up there, Joe, we talked about this probably for the last 4 years now. or 2 years ago, I talked about it. When are we gonna do something with the shoulder of that road? That road is washing and there's more gravel on the road when it rains than we have on most of the alleys.
Yes, I was up there.
Do we
And
plan on ditching that down and putting some crushed
I was-
rock in the ditch, or what are we gonna do with that?
last week, David and I rode over there, and we looked at it. We talked about installing a culvert further up the hill, like just up from Red Line's driveway, and ditching that to blow that water out into our field right there, which I think would take a lot of that water off the hill.
There's a gas line in there. We
But
can't-
there is a gas line right there, so I gotta be careful of that, okay? Then also, when I was bringing it up, Apoka was walking by, and he said, well, Joe, don't you know there's a culvert in there? It's just buried. I said, no, I don't know that there's a culvert in there. Well, yeah, it's been in there for years. It's just all filled in, and it's overflown with dirt. We just gotta dig it out and dig the vector and suck it all out. I said, well, that's nice to know. Okay, well, let's get after it, fix it. So, we're done with the leaves now. Today was the last day of our round through town with the leaves. And, so that's one of our focuses, to try to find that culvert that Jim Apoka says is there and clean it out and see if that'll help things. But if it needs a little ditching, some shaping, we can do that.
I think maybe we should put some rock in the ditch. because
Some bigger, like
that road is
4-inch
gonna start,
washed stone.
That road is gonna look like going up Spring Valley.
I know. The
Gonna
day
start
after the
breaking
rain, I
out.
saw it, and all the gravel was out in the intersection on US 2, so. We went by there and tried to scrape as much as we could with the bucket on the vehicle, but it's still all sandy there. We're gonna,
Have to get the MV out with the brush.
And the
Well-
TV tower road too, again.
we
Or still.
we graded that last week, so it's better than it was, but it was extremely bad, yes.
Ray, do you know anything about the Jake Museum being moved? Somebody asked me about that slab that's over there. Are they planning on moving that building that's over here, or?
The slab they just put in over there?
Yes.
That was put in for a sawmill. They were getting donated to them. They have, on their plans, they're trying to move the building, but I'm not aware of any concrete plans.
Yeah,
to do that.
no, it's not set yet. That is the long-term goal, is to have that building over there also and have it set up. But right now, no.
Okay, yeah,
They're
somebody
working
asked me
on the
about it,
farmhouse.
and they said that it was gonna be moved, and I didn't know that.
At the last meeting, Mark, they decided to hold off on that till sometime in the spring. And as to actually where it's gonna go over there, I don't even think they're sure. But the progress is being made on moving that sawmill.
Okay, that's all I got.
Chris?
I got a couple items. On the leaf pickup, I don't know if it was just me or if I was missing the announcements, but it seemed like this year there was very poor communication on when the leaf pickup was happening and ending. Because I looked on Channel 7, I never saw anything on there. There wasn't anything posted online. It was, I kind of had discussions with Joe on when it was happening, but that was
Yeah.
pretty much the only communication I'd gotten on
Okay.
when that leaf pickup was
Let
taking
me
place.
have a conversation at our staff meeting on Wednesday. I'll get back to you. I thought we had put it on the channel and stuff.
In previous years, it's been really good. I've never had a problem. This year just seemed
All right,
a little bit off.
I'll get you an answer.
The fiber ring, what's the progress on?
Yes, yesterday they came and, not yesterday, today's Monday. This morning, they came and spliced the fiber in the, we'll call it the water tower shack, okay? And it wasn't spliced through in the splice box, so they're gonna come back next week and splice it in the splice box. I think that the word I got was they thought it was spliced, but then they checked it and it wasn't. So, but that'll be getting taken care of shortly.
And once the splicing's done, all the other
Then,
equipment's in
then we
place?
have to pursue the automation
Okay.
and take care of all that to get rid of that phone line, or that circuit.
Yep.
That special circuit.
Okay. That fiber cable power incident on US 8
Yes.
that happened, was that the cause of the truck, or what happened there? Was
No,
that-
the cause of that was the rain and the wind took a tree down. The primary wires were going through the woods to service that house that sits back off the road there. The tree came down, hit the wires, snapped the pole off. When my trouble person came out, The wire was over the highway with plenty of clearance at that point. He identified the problem, needed to come and get a new pole, call out a couple other people. Job was gonna be pretty simple, just replace the pole, and we're good to go, couple hours. While he went to get the new pole, the tree totally fell off the wires, throwing slack in the wires, obviously pushing the pole over towards US 8. The line came down, semi hit it. So
Is that something we'll be getting insurance claim on?
we've notified the insurance company, told them about the incident. They asked me to get together an estimate on what the costs were. We are still working with CCI on getting the estimate put together for the fiber guys that all came out that night. And I've got the payroll stuff all for our own people in play. I just got to write down some material. But yeah, it was a pretty serious outage.
Yeah. Okay. The last thing I have has to do with, one thing the auditor mentioned and Mark had brought up was the cable TV rates. And I had brought this up previously about having a rate study done on those rates to make sure that, you know, everything is priced the way it should be, that we're actually making a profit, but still competitive within the market. And I would like to see us look at having that rate study done. I know there's a cost to doing that, but I think it's going to benefit us in the long run to get on top of our pricing for all the services we offer, in addition to hopefully pushing some of the more advanced services like the digital and the HDs that we have and build that up a little bit.
Okay, I wrote that down.
That's all I have.
Okay, the only thing I have is I'd like to remind everybody that the winter parking ban is in effect, and they will start issuing tickets the first inclement weather that we have. So you have to make sure your vehicles are off the road.
Which is tomorrow. It's supposed to snow in the morning.
Okay. Joe, anything else?
Yes, I wanted to address some emails that I was receiving from Chris regarding the HD channels, their availability, and then some of the problems that we've experienced over the last 2 weeks on some of the HD channels that we currently have. I received some information this evening on that, and I just wanted to bring it to your attention. It's a little bit technical, but I think we'll muddle our way through it. The 4 SEMS units that the city owns, that is up there, one of those, one of the QAM ports went out. They had to replace it. We don't have replacement SEMS units for the ones we own. So they replaced it with a Motorola TRC unit. Everything was working at the end of last week when we checked the channels. We were notified everything was working. Over the weekend, for some reason, they're claiming it was a power bump. I'm not 100% sold on that yet, but it lost its memory, the Motorola unit did, so it went back to factory default settings, and that's why you didn't have HDs again over the weekend. Okay? They've reset the memory on it, so should be okay till the next power bump.
What about, have you talked to them about the equipment replacement that we had spoken to them about?
Yes. I talked to Joe Esbrook this evening about that. When he comes to do the contracts, which will be very, very soon, we got to line that up with Ray. We'll have some discussions on the equipment that we do own that's there, and they'll assume that equipment and compensate us somehow. Not necessarily monetarily, because according to them, and you know, those are outdated pieces of gear, but I still think they have some value of some sort.
They have quite a bit of value.
Do they?
yes.
Okay.
Yes, yes.
Well, it'd be nice to know what that value would be, so if you kind of know,
I will let you know what that
share that
value
with
is.
me, what they're
Yes.
worth, okay? All right. Also, you had asked me about, I didn't know if you noticed, but Channel 99 is off the air. The piece of equipment that runs Channel 99 no longer is in operational use. They're putting a new receiver in to get that. It went bad. Channel 11 over the weekend and this morning, the voice and the mouths were not in sync with one another. They had to reprogram that piece of equipment to get it back in sync. And you had asked me about when the rest of the HDs were coming. And the answer that I got this evening was by the first of the year. So, there's some equipment that they need to purchase to get it to us. So that takes care of all those questions.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Anything else, Joe? Mary?
Not unless there's specific questions about something.
Mary?
No, no.
Anything with the audit, any thoughts?
I thought it was probably one of our best years. Scott can correct me if I'm wrong, but it seemed like it went pretty smooth. We didn't run into a lot of snags, and I want to thank Scott. He's a big asset to me year-round, not just when he's here for the audit.
Okay, thank you, sir. Tricia? Jane?
Joe,
Right.
how's the hydro running?
Unit number 1 is online. We have experienced over the last month 2 instances where the wicket gates that let the water into the turbine area, for some reason, closed on their own. It's totally unexplained at this point. I have the computer people looking into the program. They believe there's something happened in the programmable logic controller where the ladder logic lives, and something skewed up in there, something changed. And so we're looking for the original documentation from the people that programmed it to see what that change is. But other than that problem, the unit's running fine. Unit number 2, the turbines are installed on that unit now. They're putting the shafting together, progressing nicely. Obviously, their 90 days of installation is up. They are past that now, and we are keeping track of the days, and the penalties are applying to that, so.
Ray?
Election day tomorrow, so get out and vote. Be safe during deer season.
One other thing I was gonna ask, in our memo, the council saw on the police phone, do you need the pricing options between VoIP and an AT&T line? And I'd like to just have council get back with Ray on this, let him know what your feelings are, because the faster we can get that $300 off the bill, the better we are. So,
Well, you know how I feel on that. I've been anti-AT&T for how long?
I don't know, I just wanted to make sure that, because it was in there, make sure council knew. And we will be going into closed session this evening to discuss union collective bargaining, but there'll be no action taken afterward. Looking for a motion to go into closed regular session, go into closed session.
I'll make a motion, close and go into closed meeting.
Support.
Motion made by Lee, supported by Dr. Hayes. Roll call?
Mr. Oja?
Yes.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Dr. Hayes?
Yes.
Mr. Gottstein?
Yes.
Mr. Babalani?
Yes.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
Hey, Joe.